Well, the burqa is now banned in Portugal, France, Belgium, Austria, Switzerland, Denmark and Bulgaria, among others, with Italy looking set to follow in the coming months as well. Well, I think it's time we joined these progressive countries and banned the burqa, the niqab and all face coverings in the United Kingdom too. Portugal's parliament has just approved a bill prohibiting face veils worn for gender or religious reasons in public spaces. Violators face fines of up to €4,000. The legislation argues that concealing the face fosters exclusion and inferiority, particularly for women, and clashes, of course, with core Western values like liberty, equality and human dignity. And Portugal is simply joining a growing list of these European nations who see the burqa as a tool of oppression and simply incompatible with the core values of their long-living countries. This isn't limited to Western Christian majority countries, though. Even nations like Egypt, Morocco, Syria, Tunisia, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, all countries with over 90% Muslim populations, have enacted partial prohibitions driven by concerns over secularism and the need for facial recognition in the security of their countries. Across Europe, the left-wing parties have resisted these measures as tough as they can, such as the left-wing group in Portugal, who have labelled the proposed ban as xenophobic. But this is the classic hypocrisy of the left, isn't it? They claim to champion feminism and women's rights equality, but yet they defend men entering women's toilets, and they stay completely mute on the systematic oppression of women in the Middle East. And the truth is, Britain is lagging behind on this issue. In a nation where women have battled relentlessly for legal equality and only got the right to vote less than 100 years ago, let's not forget, we cannot tolerate the resurgence or the entrenchment of religious oppression on any woman in our society. It is simply un-British, isn't it? Face coverings aren't just a religious issue plaguing us, though, are they? Experts and law enforcement in the United States have warned that they erect a physiological barrier, granting wearers a sense of anonymity that emboldens crime. Well, research from the pandemic era underscored this. Masks reduce perceived detection risks, facilitating offences like street robberies and shoplifting. And in Los Angeles alone, crimes involving masked suspects surged nearly fivefold from March to October 2020 compared with 2019, with sharp rises in robberies and burglaries. Who would have thought it, eh? We've all witnessed the packs of youths prowling around the streets of Britain in ski masks. Well, I certainly have. Or those who are using those medical masks from COVID. Well, some used them as a mere fashion statement, replicating gang culture they've seen in that abysmal drill music on the internet. But others wear them to project menace, evade identification during crimes, and other, of course, threatening things. When we see the masked men show up at protests, of course, and begin causing violence, we know that they think they'll be able to get away with it because they simply aren't recognisable. That is why we keep seeing these violence at protests. We've got to stop it. The police have the power to do so. And in the case of the burqa, well, I believe that burqa and the niqab and similar oppressive garments were simply created to satisfy the historical insecurities of men who were viciously jealous of other men and wanted to prevent another man glancing at their women. None of this aligns with our British values, does it? It is profoundly and deeply un-British in every way, shape and form. As I always say, if you choose to live here, you must honour our way of life and integrate. So my message is quite simple. Take off the burqa, remove your face masks, or be prepared to leave. Or I hope you might face a large fine at the bare minimum or the full force of the law one day if we can outlaw these oppressive and threatening face coverings in Britain.
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just living credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponize against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
Right, let's get the thoughts of my star panel. Journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, former Labour advisor Paul Richards, and former Met Police detective Peter Blexley. Linda, you're a woman. Just self-identify, hopefully. So, listen, I understand there's an argument about liberties here. And I want to get to that at first, because many people will say, well, actually, we shouldn't have restrictions on what people should and shouldn't wear in British public, in the public in Britain. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I think that I understand that argument, but I think the point here is one of security, where if we are introducing facial recognition or any other kind of identification, particularly in high-risk areas, I think you've got to be able to see people's faces. But you made a very good point in your intro. You said that people who come to this country for safe haven are escaping tyrannical rule where the burqa and the niqab are enforced. And I might point out that in some countries, women who don't comply face 72 lashes or imprisonment. Now, 72 lashes, it's almost a medieval punishment, isn't it?
It's barbaric.
The fact of the matter is that I think if you look back to Masha Amini, the woman who died in police custody for refusing to cover her hair, you can tell how heinously badly these women are treated. Now, I think it's pretty OK, cover your hair. But these face coverings, the burqa is symbolic of women's oppression. It shouldn't be allowed, as the niqab is as well. So I completely agree. Portugal should ban face coverings, and so should we.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with headscarves, by the way. I'm absolutely fine with that. Women have practiced wearing headscarves. I mean, my grandma used to go out wearing a headscarf when it was raining, right? I've got no problem with that. It's the covering of the face, Paul, that really bothers me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, our mums all wore headscarves, didn't they? You know, so that's a perfectly OK thing to do. I mean, I think it's not only un-British, to pick up your monologue there, I think it's un-Islamic as well. There are millions of Muslim women who are true to their faith who do not cover their faces all over the world, and including in this country. And it's a small sect within Islam that insists on this. It's the men insisting upon it, not the women. And I think we have to be a little bit careful about the state saying what it can and can't, you know, what you can and can't wear. And the question mark will be over how do you police this? Are we going to have, you know, police resources dedicated to arresting women for face coverings? But if we set the tone and just say, look, we think this is unnecessary, you know, maybe there's some regulatory thing there that needs to be done. Certainly a debate needs to happen as to why women are being forced to wear these face coverings. I think that is a conversation worth having, because I think it is patriarchal. I think it is oppressive, and I think it's something that is being imposed on women, not something they want to do themselves.
Yeah, Peter, of course, we can get into into the religious debate about whether or not some of these radical Islamist ideas like the full face covering are acceptable in Britain. But I'm not just talking about them. I see these kids all the time in London now. You just go walk through any part of London, you're going to see kids with ski masks on. This makes the police's job impossible to catch them, doesn't it?
In my previous career as a police officer, generally speaking, when I came across somebody in a face covering, it meant that my hand slipped into my shoulder holster. I pulled out my Smith & Wesson, pointed it at them and went, "Armed police!" Because they were about to rob a post office van.
Yes.
Or maybe commit aggravated burglary on a jeweller's or something like that. So as you can imagine, I hate face coverings. I think they should be banned under all circumstances. I can't think of an exception whereby, unless of course we had another pandemic, they should be allowed. Get rid.
Yeah, and do you agree? So Italy is proposing a fine, Portugal's proposing a fine, Switzerland have proposed they've got a fine active now. Do you think that's a good way to deal with this?
Yeah, and if you don't pay the fine, you go to prison.
Yeah. What do you think, Linda?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I notice, I won't identify my town again, but I live in a fairly small, pretty, calm, peaceful town. But I notice more and more walking down the high street, particularly at the weekend, there are women in the niqab, not the burqa. We don't see the blue burqa quite so much in this country. I've very rarely seen it. But the niqab is to me, looks like a sinister garment that signifies oppression. And the fact that I see it fairly frequently every weekend in my little town is very, very worrying.
That is very worrying. And Paul, I pointed out there's a bit of hypocrisy on some left-wing parties here on this, because they want to champion gender equality, they want to champion feminism, but when it comes to certain cultural habits like the niqab, which are cultural in my opinion, or at least extremist religious ideologies, which I think this is, they sort of lose their voice all of a sudden, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think people sort of tie themselves in knots for fear of causing offence or making alliances with people who they think are their friends and are not. And then they get into this sort of situation as you described. But for me, I remember discussing this with Labour ministers back in the day. It's about access to society, same as learning the language, learning English. It's about being able to access work, community, make friends from people from different backgrounds. It's allowing women to be British and be British citizens, even if they want to carry on being Muslim.
Absolutely.
And so it's access to society, and a physical barrier to that, literal barrier to that, is something that we should not approve of.
Yeah. What would you say to that? Because I do think there's an extremist cultural value here in some communities, Peter. I think we've got past the point of where many of them will assimilate. What happens in that point where they don't want to leave Britain, but unfortunately we might ban the burqa and they might ban the niqab? What happens?
We have to hope that we've got politicians with the spine to ban it. I very much doubt we have. We've got a left-wing socialist government, and look how much they appease anything to do with Islam. Appeasement, appeasement, appeasement. And there's so many stories on a daily, weekly basis about how people, because they stand up and say, "Oh, don't do that because you'll be Islamophobic," and politicians, councillors cave in. They cave in. They appease. And what does appeasement do? It empowers people. And look what we've seen with face coverings at those despicable pro-Palestine marches, with the chanting, the calling for genocide, the calling for wiping Israel off the face of the planet, and all of that. It's about time politicians had the courage to stand up and do the right thing.
Can I just make one point? As far as I know, very briefly, there's no reference to face coverings in the Quran.
No, of course not.
If there is not even direct references to head coverings. There are general rereferences to modesty, and that is it.
That's where it's been taken out of control.
Yes.
Agreed.
Pete, just Paul, a bit of balance. Do you think Labour's kowtowing to Islam?
Certainly not. And I think on an issue like this, we would be on the side of women and women's rights. And absolutely.
All right. Well, look,